You know those rare moments that strike so unexpectedly, they burn into your memory forever. You even remember the way the air seemed to press against your skin. That's exactly what happened the day my boss asked me to step into her office alone. At first, I assumed it would be something ordinary, a quick note about a project, maybe a small mistake I hadn't noticed. But when she closed the door and fixed her eyes on mine before speaking, I realized I was completely unprepared for what was about to unfold. Before I take you deeper into the story, let me pause for just a second. Where are you watching from right now? I always love seeing the different places this little channel manages to reach. Share your city or town in the comments below. It honestly makes me smile to think about how far these stories can travel. It had been one of those gray, dragging Thursday mornings, the kind where the rain slid lazily down the windows in slow, endless streams. I was halfway through my second cup of coffee when the phone on my desk lit up with her extension, Isabella, my boss. I'd been under her leadership for nearly 5 years. She wasn't known for being warm, but she was steady, fair, and impossible to ignore. "Celine," she said, her tone calm but softer than usual, "can you step into my office for a moment?" A flutter rolled through my stomach, a mix of nerves and curiosity. I glanced around the open workspace, the steady hum of printers, the low murmur of conversations, all of it carrying on as if my world hadn't suddenly shifted. I smoothed my skirt, stood up, and walked the narrow hallway toward her door. Isabella's office always carried a certain weight, not because of her directly, but because everything inside seemed to mirror who she was, precise, controlled, perfectly in order. The walls were lined with polished degrees and carefully selected artwork. The air carried a faint blend of cedar and something faintly floral, like a perfume she never actually wore outside those 4 walls. She motioned for me to enter. Then, without a single word, she reached back and pushed the door shut. The click of the latch echoed louder than it should have, and I knew at that moment this was not going to be an ordinary conversation. The sound of the latch echoed louder than it should have, sharp in the quiet room. "Sit," she said, her voice gentler than I expected. I lowered myself into the chair across from her desk, the leather creaking under my weight. My palms rested on my knees, but I could feel my fingers twitch, betraying the nerves I tried to hide. She leaned back in her chair, her gaze locked on me, not with the cold professional distance I'd grown used to, but with something different, almost searching. "I've been thinking about you a lot lately," she began. Her words startled me. It had been years since she'd said anything that wasn't strictly tied to work. I tilted my head slightly, unsure where this conversation was heading. She leaned forward then, resting her elbows on the polished desk, hands loosely folded together. "You've been here for years, and I've watched you, not just as an employee, but as a person. You carry yourself with grace, even when things are hard, and I know it hasn't always been easy for you." Her words struck deeper than I expected. My mind went back over the past few years, the silent battles I never spoke about, the nights I dragged myself home drained, the mornings when I forced on a brave smile no matter how heavy I felt inside. Had she really seen all of that? The rain tapped against the windows in a steady rhythm, soft but constant. The low hum of the vent filled the silence, mixing with the faint scent of cedar and something floral drifting through the air. "Isabella, I don't know what to say," I whispered. She smiled then, not the usual polite smile she wore at the office, but something softer, more human. "You don't need to say anything. I just want you to know I see you, I value you, and there's something I've been wanting to share with you, something that could change your place here." My breath caught. Change? Did she mean a new title? A promotion? Or was this something else entirely? Her gaze stayed steady, unwavering. "I need you to trust me when I say this isn't only about work. It's about recognizing who you are, and making sure you're where you're truly meant to be." A pause followed, thick with meaning. The silence seemed to carry its own weight, almost alive with energy. Her words carried a weight that settled deep inside me. Curiosity pressed in, mixing with a strange warmth in my stomach that I couldn't quite explain. I had walked into her office expecting a short, routine conversation about work. Instead, I found myself leaning closer, pulled towards something I couldn't yet define. Then she spoke, her voice softer now. "But before I tell you everything, I need to ask you something first." I stayed quiet, my heart pounding a little louder in my chest. I couldn't tell if it was nerves or the start of something I didn't fully understand yet. As I looked at her across the desk, the room no longer felt like a place of deadlines and reports. It felt different, personal, almost timeless, like whatever happened here would stay with me long after that rainy Thursday faded. Her question seemed to linger before it even left her lips, heavy with meaning. She studied me closely, almost as if she was testing whether I was ready to hear it. And then in a low, steady voice she asked, "Celine, if you had the chance to step into something completely different, something that would push you far beyond everything you've known here, would you take it?" I blinked, caught off guard. The words were broad, but the way she asked them made it feel intimate, almost personal. My fingers pressed slightly into my knees as I realized I was holding my breath. "I suppose that depends," I said softly, "on what it is and why you're asking me." Isabella leaned back, the leather chair letting out a faint sigh. She folded her arms loosely across herself, but her gaze never wavered. "I've been searching for someone I can trust completely," she said. "This isn't a role I can list on a job board. It takes more than skill. It takes understanding, discretion, and a kind of presence that can't be taught." Her words felt like they were pulling away the layers of formality we both wore every day in this building. There were no job titles here, no deadlines, just a quiet, deliberate exchange that reached far deeper. "What exactly are you offering me?" I finally asked. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she rose from her chair and crossed to the window. Her hands rested lightly on the sill as she gazed out at the rain-soaked parking lot below, the gray light softening the sharpness of her features. The soft light streaming through the window seemed to blur her sharp features, making her look almost fragile for a moment. At last, she spoke. "This isn't about money, and it's not about titles," she said quietly. "It's about working with me in ways that go beyond the normal walls of this office. I need someone I can depend on, not just in meetings or projects, but in moments when I have no one else I can turn to." Her voice carried weight, and something inside me shifted. A strange mix of curiosity and flattery rose up, along with the faintest ripple of unease. "Why me?" I asked. She turned back toward me, her face calm but softer than I had ever seen it. "Because you listen. You see things others miss. You don't get pulled into the noise, and I trust you. That kind of trust is rare, Celine." The words caught me off guard. In all my years here, I had never thought I stood out in her eyes. I had always been steady, reliable, but trust, that was something I had never expected to hear from her. Isabella walked back toward her desk, but instead of sitting, she rested one hand against the edge, leaning slightly forward. "If you say yes, there will be times when the path isn't clear. You'll have to take things as they come. Trust your instincts, and trust me." The way she said that last part filled the room with a charge that had nothing to do with the hum of the heating vent. I glanced toward the closed door behind me, realizing how far away the outside office suddenly felt. It was as if we were in an entirely different world. "All right," I said slowly, "I'll listen. But I need to know everything before I commit." A small smile curved her lips, faint but certain. "Good. That's exactly what I wanted to hear." She circled back to her chair and sat again, this time leaning in closer than before, her eyes locked on mine. "There's something happening inside the company right now," she said, her tone steady. "Only a few people know about it. It's going to change everything for those who stay, and I want you with me when it happens." Her words sent a shiver through me. Part of me wanted to fire off 100 questions at once, but another part, the quieter, steadier voice inside, knew this was only the beginning of something bigger, something she wasn't ready to reveal just yet. She glanced at the clock, then back at me. "Come to my house this weekend. We'll have more privacy there, and I can explain everything." I hesitated, but only for a second. "Yes, I can." Her smile deepened, though her expression grew more serious. "Good. Then we'll talk there. And Celine, until then, not a word to anyone. Do you understand?" I nodded, the weight of her request sinking in. As I stood and smoothed my skirt, the hallway outside her office felt changed somehow, as if I was carrying something invisible but heavy. I didn't know exactly what I was walking into, but I knew one thing for certain: by the time this was over, nothing would be the same again. The rest of that Thursday passed in a blur. I sat at my desk, my eyes fixed on the computer screen, but my thoughts drifted again and again to Isabella. Her voice, her piercing gaze, the way she had said, "I want you with me when it happens." I went through the motions, answered emails, joined a meeting, nodded when I needed to, but inside I felt split between two worlds. In one, I was the steady, reliable employee I had always been. In the other, I was carrying a secret no one around me could even imagine. By the time Saturday afternoon arrived, the anticipation had grown heavier, pressing down on me with every passing hour. I stood in front of my mirror longer than usual, debating what to wear. Too formal and it would feel wrong, too casual and it would seem careless. At last, I settled on a soft blue sweater and simple black slacks, something that felt natural, something that was me without trying too hard. Isabella's home was only 15 minutes from mine, but arriving there felt like stepping into an entirely different world. A long, winding driveway led up to a tall two-story house, its wide windows looking out over rows of swaying trees. The rain that had drenched the city earlier in the week was gone now, replaced by a soft golden light that poured across the yard, warm and welcoming. She opened the front door before I could even knock a second time. "Celine," she said with a smile that felt less like a polite greeting and more like a true welcome. "Come in." The moment I stepped inside, the air wrapped around me with warmth, carrying a faint trace of cinnamon mixed with something savory drifting from the kitchen. The space was elegant yet inviting. Thick rugs framed family photographs, and a fireplace glowed with a low, steady flame. "Make yourself comfortable," she said, motioning toward the living room. "I'll bring us some tea." I sat on the couch, folding my hands in my lap as my eyes roamed the room. The shelves were arranged neatly, books grouped by color. A small crystal vase held a single fresh lily, its petals open and white against the polished wood. The firelight flickered across the floor, painting everything in a soft glow. When she returned, she carried 2 cups and placed one gently in my hands before sitting beside me instead of across from me. The tea was warm, and I felt its heat seep into my fingers as she studied me closely, her eyes steady. "I asked you here because I need to speak openly," she said at last. "And I can't do that at the office. Not yet." I gave a small nod, waiting. "There's a restructuring happening at the very top of the company," she continued. "It's going to change everything. Who stays, who leaves, what roles even exist. Most people won't hear about it until the last moment. But I already know, and I've been given some influence in how it unfolds." She took a slow sip of tea, her eyes never leaving mine. "I have the chance to choose one person to work with me through this transition, someone who can handle pressure, manage the chaos, and most importantly, someone I can trust." I set my cup gently on the table between us. "And you want that person to be me?" "I do," she said simply. "Because I know you don't lose your head when things turn difficult, because I've watched you face situations with more calm and grace than most people ever could." "This sounds like an incredible opportunity," I said softly, though the hesitation in my voice was impossible to hide. Isabelle gave a small nod, as if my uncertainty was exactly what she had expected. "It is," she admitted, "but it will also ask more of you than anything you've ever done before. And it's not only the workload, it's the responsibility, the kind of knowledge you'll carry when others have no idea what's happening around them." The firelight flickered in her eyes, and for a moment it felt as though I was staring into something far deeper than just words. She leaned forward, her hands resting on her knees. "I need someone who won't crumble when things get complicated. Someone who can sit in a room full of people making choices that affect hundreds of lives and still stay clear-headed. Celine, I know that person is you." Her certainty stirred something inside me, something I hadn't felt in years. For so long I had done my work quietly, efficiently, expecting little more than a paycheck and the occasional polite recognition. But to have someone truly see me, not just my work but me, was unexpectedly moving. "But why now?" I asked carefully. "Why not choose someone younger, someone with more years left ahead of them here?" She shook her head firmly. "Because experience isn't about how many years are left. It's about what those years have taught you. I've watched you face challenges most people wouldn't even notice, and that's not something ambition or energy can replace. I need judgment, and you have it." The room grew quieter, the steady hum of the heating system fading into the background against the weight of her words. My mind drifted back over the years, the times I had chosen patience over anger, the small details I had noticed when no one else was paying attention. And for the first time, I wondered if she had been watching all along. Maybe she had been watching all along. Maybe she had noticed more than I ever realized. I drew in a slow breath. "If I say yes, what happens next?" Her lips curved into a faint smile. "Next you'll start coming to private meetings with me, meetings no one else even knows about. You'll help me plan strategies, predict outcomes, and manage pieces others don't even realize exist." She paused, her tone shifting, more personal now. "And Celine, you'll have a voice, not just in the room, but in shaping what comes after all of this." The words struck me deeply. A voice. After years of feeling like just another cog in the machine, the thought of finally helping to shape something, of being part of the choices instead of simply carrying them out, it was thrilling and terrifying at the same time. I looked into her eyes, and for the first time since stepping into her office that Thursday, my uncertainty gave way to something steadier, more certain. "All right," I said quietly. "I'm in." Isabella's smile widened, warmer this time, more certain. She reached across the small space between us, her hand resting lightly on mine. It was brief, but the gesture carried the weight of a promise. "You won't regret this, Celine, and I won't forget that you said yes." We spoke for a while longer, drifting into smaller details, but my mind kept circling back to that one moment of decision. By the time I finally left her house, the sky outside had deepened into a dark indigo, the evening air cool against my skin. As I drove home, I felt a strange mix of calm and anticipation stirring inside me. I didn't know exactly what the next weeks would hold, but I knew one thing for certain: I would never again be the woman who stayed quietly in her corner. Isabella had opened a door I hadn't even known existed, and I had stepped through it, ready to find out where it might lead.